Hey everyone, and welcome to your C# tutorial on static variables. So as you can see, I have Visual Studio pulled up, and our old friend, the person class, is at the ready. So to begin this, what I'd like to do is talk about the relationship between classes and objects, right? So previously, we talked about a class as sort of a blueprint for an object. And so an instance or an object, we'll say instance in this instance. An instance is sort of the implementation of the class. So all of our member variables and stuff like that up until now have been accessed through an instance versus a class. And so the relationship between a class and an instance is a one-to-many relationship, right? So you have one class, and using that one class, you can create many objects, right? So for example, we're using the person class right here. There's only one of those, but we're going to use it to create, multiple people. So that creates an instance of a person, and this creates an instance of a person, and so on, right? So we can have multiple instances of the person class, but we really just have one copy of that class, and each person gets its own first name and last name, right? Each of these person objects gets their own first name and last name. So we can have this one be equal to Pete, and for person 2, we can have their first name equal to Dave, and our third person 3, we can have their first name equal to Barbara. So everybody gets their own variable in the normal way of doing things. But now what I'd like to talk about is creating static variables. So a static variable is a variable that exists on the level of the class, right? So these member variables exist on the level of the instance. So each instance, as we discussed, gets a new variable. For a static variable exists on the level of the class. So there's only one per class. So you can create multiple instances, but there will only ever be one of these static variables per class. And so I'll create one now to show you how it looks. Sorry, we'll make it public static string, and we will say that this is our, official last name. So there's only ever going to be one official last name for the class. So if we go through and we look at our person 3 object here, person 3, we use our dot, and we actually don't see it in this list because it's not accessed on the object level. It's accessed on the class level, right? So we can see our first name and our last name here in this list of possible members, but we don't see our official last name because it's not on the level of the instance. So we have to call the class. So this is how that looks. And there it is, person.official last name, right? So we'll say that is equal to officialness or something. So you can see how this is different, right? So in the example with our person 3 object, just to look at them side by side here, we have our person3 instantiation, and then we access our member variable on that instance, right? So, each person gets a new first name. However, the person class will only ever have one official last name, right? And you access that on the class level. So I know that this can be confusing, but you can kind of think of these static variables as being more global in nature. Instance variables will go away once the object goes out of scope. So this has sort of been our rundown of static variables. They're basically the same as normal variables, except they use this static keyword, right? So if we remove the static keyword, it would look exactly the same as the rest of these member variables. Obviously, we could not access it on the level of the class, and instead would have to access it on the level of the object, right? But if we do use this static keyword, we can access it on the level of the class. Now, these can be useful, but when you use these, you have to be certain of why you're using them. So thanks for watching, and in our next video, we'll talk about static methods.